If you've got a video podcast or you've been thinking about adding videos to your podcast, you've probably wondered how you can create a recording setup that not only looks professional, but also enhances your confidence and clarity on camera. So how can mastering your podcast space transform the quality of your content, both video and audio, and the impact you can have on your audience? In this episode, I chat with Junaid Ahmed, who is an expert in setting up podcast studios. We're going to hear about his journey, some of his top tips for creating a distraction-free setup, and insights from his new book on mastering home studios. Now, Junaid Ahmed isn't just passionate about technology and design, he has lived and breathed it for years. He's got a background in film, graphic design, and enterprise-level applications, and he has a wealth of knowledge that's going to help you really lift your podcasting game. He's consulted over 200 people on optimizing their podcast setups, and today he's here to share his wisdom with us. Welcome to the Online Business Launchpad podcast. I'm Trudy Rankin, and I bring you stories, tips, and advice from online entrepreneurs who have worked their way through problems and challenges to get to success. Because if we've done it, so can you. I've been running my own online business for over 9 years now, overcoming my own challenges to achieve my goals. And because of what I've learned, I've become passionate about helping business owners like you successfully tackle the bumps in the road that could stop you from hitting the goals that matter to you. I've used my experience and the experience of others to help hundreds of people grow the online side of their business. And one of my greatest joys is working with people who, because of life circumstances, need a flexible work from home option that helps them pay the bills. My mission is simple. I want to help you solve the challenges you face as an online business owner so you can have more time and money for yourself and your family and more choices in how you live your life. So if you're ready to once again dive into online business building and master your podcast setup, stick around and we'll get cracking. Welcome to the Online Business Launchpad podcast. I am so excited today to have one of my fellow FBI Pro members with me, who is somebody who's been there longer than I have. And he is someone who is an expert at helping people set up their podcast and their backgrounds and all the things that have to do with making sure that you're not distracting your listener and your watcher from what you have to say. He's here to share some of his story, some of his tips, and to also talk about a book that he's just written that actually help you with your podcast setup. So, Junaid Ahmed, welcome to the Online Business Launchpad podcast. I'm so happy to have you here, and I'm looking forward to some of the tips that you're going to share with me just a little bit later.
Absolutely, Trudy. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super excited to have this conversation. Somebody mentioned that unless you're sick of the stuff that you do and talk about it, you haven't gotten the word out. So I'm not there yet, and I don't think I will ever get there because I love this stuff so much.
Well, it helps so much, doesn't it? When you really enjoy what you're doing and there's a lot of variety to what you do, it helps a lot. So for our listeners, can you maybe share a little bit of the story of how you've gotten to where you are and what you do? Because based on what we talked about already, you've done quite a few things. So yeah, just please share with our listeners.
Absolutely. So I come from a background where I love technology. From a very young age, I think teenagers, my dad got us a PC. Now, before he got us the PC, I wanted to be a pilot. But as soon as this PC came in, everything changed because I could see the technology is something that was really fascinating. Now, back then, we had massive televisions and massive desktops without any of the cool things that we have now, like music and CDs and like everything that you can't even imagine about. Regardless, when I saw my dad type away on that computer without even looking at the keyboard, I was like, whoa, that is magic. Like, how does he know all of this? That got me involved into learning about computers. Now, this is in the 90s. It wasn't until later that I graduated from high school and was transported to the US. I got myself a computer because I was going to go to college, and I took it apart and put it back together and put a bunch of pieces together, and it was really fascinating. And as I discovered this technology, I was also into cameras and photography. That was actually before So I got into cameras before I got into computers. So that was totally different path. So anyways, when those two paths merged as time progresses, as I did graphic design, I did website design, then I did app design, enterprise level application design, and now I design home studios. And the cool crossing of it came when during the pandemic, I set up my space to look this clean. And people started asking me the question, how did you get here? So I'll tell them, well, I took photography courses and I've been in film for the past 10 years. I took 20 different courses to understand how cameras work. They're like, wait, okay, that's too much. How about you just tell me what I need to do? So I started consulting on telling people, this is where you need to have your microphone. This is where you need to have your cameras and lights. But before I could teach them that, I had to set it up for myself and make sure that I followed the footstep of what I was teaching. So long story short, it's been a passion of mine to be behind the camera for the longest time. But it was really hard for me to get comfortable in front of the camera. But with practice and with the technology that we have available now, I think the most important thing that helped me was the confidence monitor that I installed. But anyways, we can go deeper into that a little later.
I'm curious though, what's confidence monitor?
So a lot of the times when we are in front of a camera or a webcam, we end up looking at the screen because you're looking at the guest on the other side or yourself to see how you're looking, right? A confidence monitor is basically a screen sitting in front of it's another name for a teleprompter. But instead of just text on that teleprompter screen, you can also bring a video or a Zoom window to it. So that also helped me with my confidence because now I could see how sharp I look and I can also put up my notes on there. So it enabled me to get there a little faster. I think the other thing that also helped a lot was being in communities where people encourage and support you. And I think that's a very powerful thing. And that's what you mentioned earlier. We're both part of the SBI Pro community. And getting support in this space is super, super important because they say the entrepreneurship is a lonely journey, but it's not. If you find the right team of people, right masterminds, right group of people to hang out with, you can do so much better and go so much farther.
That is so true. That is definitely what I've discovered. It is a lonely journey unless you can surround yourself with a group of people who get what you're trying to do and they understand what you're trying to do. They really get it. So that's really interesting. So I find it fascinating talking to people who are on this journey, and what you're talking about is something that's really close to my heart. Obviously, I'm a podcaster and I do other kinds of videos as well when I do training courses and things like that. And it's always one of those things where you go, well, have I done everything I can do to try and actually put things together in a way that it's aesthetically pleasing to the eye, it doesn't distract from your message, and you still feel comfortable and confident, and it doesn't compromise your everyday living, if that makes any sense. So I'm curious for you in terms of your evolution, in terms of how you set up your podcast space and all of those things. And your book, of course, you said was 7 stages. So just talk a little bit about your own evolutionary journey when it comes to setting up your own space.
100%. So it was the beginning of 2020. I was commuting to DC for work, and we started hearing about COVID-19 and blah, blah, blah happening in China. It didn't even occur to me that it would come here. But around the same time in February, an old colleague of mine reached out to me and said, hey, I have this new 100% remote opportunity. Would you be interested? I was like, sure. I wanted to work from home because I had this podcast going and I would record every Wednesdays. So in February, I started working from home. And a month later, the entire world was working from home. So I had that 1 month lead. And before we even did that, we were having issues in home where we had cold air coming in from different places. So we had windows replaced in our basement. We had a whole bunch of work done. And now that the windows look nicer in my basement, I was like, what if I flip the whole thing around? So before, my desk used to be there, and in the back you would see these windows. So when I flipped it around, it's like, wow, this feels a lot better. And then as soon as I start putting the camera up, I could see what the camera saw. I was like, oh, I got to do something about this. Now, as I am going through this journey of my own evolution, I started noticing that Pat Flynn started live streaming every day. I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. His camera is sharp. Everything is so good. So for a couple of weeks, I'm watching this stuff and hanging out in the community. And then he published a blog post. So as he published his blog post, I'm going through this list. And I'm like, wait a minute. I have all the gear he's talking about. Because like I said, I've been in the film space for the past 14 years now. And I've shot short films. I've done commercials. I've done all sorts of video production for other people where I'm behind the camera. I know how to operate the gear. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is so simple. This is so easy. So I've been taking photos and videos through point and shoot cameras, camcorders, then smartphones came out, right? So shooting photos and videos for the longest time. And in 2013, my wife got me a DSLR camera. I was like, oh my God, this is the real deal. And I think a few years before that, I had heard that people on TV shows were using DSLR cameras for shooting video for their shows because it has that capacity already. When I discovered this, I jumped into lynda.com back then, which is now LinkedIn Learning. And there's at least 5 different courses by Ben Long, The Foundation of Photography. And he talks from everything from sensors, lenses, camera bodies, like you name it, he talks about it. So I learned everything that I could from him. I watched another 15 different courses to learn everything. Like I am training my brain, like I'm doing machine learning for my brain on the photography. So I bring all of that knowledge with me to my studio now. There's a really amazing gentleman on YouTube, Caleb Pike. He runs a channel called DSLR Video Shooter. To this date, he has about 600,000 subscribers, and he posts content around cameras. He just talks about cameras and the different rigging because he's doing that for others. So I'm bringing all this knowledge together. I'm putting it together. And my end game was to shoot a course for mastering iPhone video production. And when I tried to do it in my little basement in 2019, everything looked ugly, yellow walls, blah, blah, blah. And then I had to take a break because I didn't know what to say in front of the camera. I was like, okay, I need to work on myself. Now the pandemic, as I put all these things together in the pandemic, I got better at talking to the camera. I got better at having these conversations on camera. Just better. Like the more you do, the better you get. And so that's been my evolution. And still today, I'm constantly tweaking things in the space. I'll show you the behind the scenes. This light here used to be further away. The reason I brought it closer is because now I wear glasses. So when I was wearing glasses, I could see the shadow of this bar here on my eye. And I was like, okay, I need to bring the light closer, right? So when I'm camera, I just take my glasses off. I can see just fine. It's just sometimes some blur. But overall, I'm constantly tweaking this space because I want to make it as efficient as possible and reduce the friction. Because when you reduce friction, you're going to create more content. You're going to be more present with the people that you're working with.
Actually, that's true. I hadn't thought about it like that, but that whole reducing friction thing is actually really critical. The less friction there is, the less excuses you have to actually get in there and doing something. I think that's really important. Well, I'm really interested. We could talk about things for a long time because it's always fascinating to me when people write books. But I'd like to get into some specifics, though, in terms of some of the things that you might be able to share. So let's talk about the book in a minute. When we jumped off, you were suggesting to me that maybe there are some things I could do to improve my setup. So I'd like to dig into that just a little. For the people who are listening, I have a blurred background, and I have a reason for blurring the background. If I were to describe my space, I'm really lucky I have windows, so I have natural light, dark when we started this particular podcast episode. So that light wasn't there, but it is coming in now. The dawn is here. But I have limited capacity to rearrange my space for a number of reasons. One of which is we live in a very small apartment by choice. We enjoy just the small lifestyle where you can walk out, lock the door, and leave for a period of time. You don't have to worry so much about things. But it is a small space. And so it has to fulfill a number of functions and things like that. So I showed Junaid why I have my background blurred, and I'm going to do it again. I'm just going to quickly unblur it. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a challenge, Junaid. What can I do to improve my background? Because on one side of me, I have a whole lot of pictures of my family. And on the other side of me, I have a really, truly ugly blue wall. And then directly behind me, I have a mirror, a full-length floor-to-ceiling mirror. So what can I do? And I also have 2 beds behind me that are going to disappear. They get put away. They'll be put away soon.
Absolutely. So, well, I like that you have the mirror there because you want to see what you're working with, right? We love mirrors. I love mirrors. I had this massive mirror on this wall that I took out and put in a different room because this used to be a gym. So for the mirror, I'll probably move the mirror if possible. But if you can't move the mirror, you can always add in a poster front of it that's movable, right? So in this shot, you'll see I have this massive poster of the Avengers. So something that resonates with you, you can put something over there in that shot. Now, I do that you have these massive windows in front of you. If you were closer to that window and you changed the camera that you're using, because again, you are using a webcam, but if you're using a camera like mine, which has a controllable f-stop, which means that the reason my background is blurred because that is the functionality of the lens that I'm using. So those are 2 things that I would recommend. And then if you are recording at nighttime, so in my room, I do have 2 windows, but they're covered because I want to control the light. So I paint the room with light. I start with a dark canvas and I start adding 1 light at a time. So that's what I would do in your space as well. Start with a dark room. And that blue color is actually really nice looking. If the entire background was that color, it would look actually pretty neat, especially with the right camera and the right lighting.
Well, it comes down to taste, but it is at least a solid color. It's my favorite color.
You might be getting tired of it because guess what? I wear this shirt during the week and my wife, for some reason, didn't even click it. We had a similar color rug in our living room. And she's like, I want to get rid of this rug. It's just driving me crazy. So we gave it to our mother-in-law. And I was like, I think you're getting tired of me wearing the same shirt.
For those of you who are listening, it's a maroon polo shirt and is that the home studio? Is that your logo?
Yeah, it says Home Studio Mastery on it.
Yeah, I think that's classic. The things that we have around us at home always do come in and flavor what we do. Okay, so that's really helpful. I am, just for my own benefit, I'm going to look for the background again.
Of course.
I find it really distracting. But it was interesting. I'm listening to your tips. There's a couple things that I can do. I will try them and see if that makes any difference. But let's move now to just talking a little bit about your book. I'm fascinated by your journey into books. And when we were talking before, you talked about how you've already done, this is like your 3rd book. And you showed me the 2 books you've done before. For people who are listening, you might not know, I wouldn't say a connoisseur, but I really enjoy and I collect really well done children's book where the illustration and the text go together to create a synergy that isn't there otherwise. And I have quite a collection of really well done children's books. But you showed me your children's books and I'm like, oh, that looks really cool. Is it up on Amazon for sale?
Yes, it is. It's called A to Zoo Animal Alphabet Symphony.
It just looks so cool. Yeah, and so I'll put the link to that in the show notes. But the one that you've just finished, I think is the one that most people listening will be really interested in, especially if they're thinking about doing a podcast or they already have a podcast or they do videos and they're looking for ways to just lift the space around them and how they do that. So can you just talk a little bit about how you got to actually doing your book?
Absolutely. So I've consulted over 200 people in the past 3 years to setting up their gear correctly and getting the framing right. And as I help them, the same question keep coming up every time I have a new call. So yes, because guess what? There's new people entering the workforce all the time. So as I'm talking about the same stuff over and over, I was like, what if there was a book that would teach people like, hey, you already have a camera. In this era of the world that we're living in, literally everybody has a camera in their pocket. We use it more to consume than to create, which is totally fine. But this $1,000 camera in our pocket, the smartphone, the Samsungs, the iPhones, the Huawei, like whatever phone you have, they have really powerful cameras. In fact, I think it was Flickr.com that posted a survey 5 years ago where the most photos shot and uploaded there was using an iPhone camera. So anyways, long story short, as people are asking these questions, I was like, I wonder what stage is everybody in? Because not everybody's going to have 3 cameras set up like myself, or not everybody's going to have a lot of lighting or a DSLR camera. Not everybody's going to have the budget to go to the top or even start in the middle. So I figured, okay, let's lay out a step-by-step or stage-by-stage situation where if you have these 2 things, you're already the novice. You can create really good content. And what you want to focus on building a library of content that you're proud of with just those gears. What that does, it helps you to value the content that you're creating. And it then opens your mind to investing more into that space. So as you're getting good at creating the video content, I think Mr. Beast shot his first 100 videos on a smartphone that you could probably still find on YouTube. So you get better as you do more. The next upgrade, you go from the novice to the hobbyist. Now the hobbyist, you're like, okay, I'm doing this. My camera is really powerful. In fact, they shot a feature-length film using an iPhone 7 Plus. 3 iPhone 7 Pluses shot full-on video and movies. And I think it was available on Netflix for a while. And the time that we're recording this, the best camera that you can buy from Apple is the iPhone 15 Pro, which Apple has been using on all of their video shoots and production. Now, the gear surrounding this camera might cost $100,000 or more, but again, the camera in it is the iPhone. So you have a really powerful phone and you can take it to at least 3 different stages. So the next stage is the hobbyist, and then the thing that I recommend adding is a microphone that has a higher dynamic range. So a microphone starting at $50 to maybe $250, and that microphone is going to capture the most accurate sound that you produce. Now, each one of us have a specific frequency, and as you record audio, different microphones will only isolate different things because, again, they have to conform to the bandwidth that they have to push the audio through. So yes, headsets were great in the beginning, but now that we're doing this professionally, you want to invest in a better microphone. That microphone is going to last you to at least 4 or 5 different stages easily. So the stage after the novice, the hobbyist, is the enthusiast. The enthusiast is saying, okay, I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm going to add a higher end camera, which is going to have a nice glass in front of it. And that's going to create this epic cinematic look that people die for, right? So when you go from the camera on your smartphone to the camera that's designed for photography and filmmaking, you'll immediately notice the difference where not everything is in focus anymore. In fact, they had to enable the cinematic mode on smartphones to mimic what a regular camera already does by default. So that's, again, the enthusiast stage. And as you go up, you're basically adding more cameras, getting better audio, getting more soundproofing in your room, get better lighting. I have a list of recommended gear listed in the book that talks about, hey, you might want to consider adding some soundproofing. You might want to consider adding a better chair or ergonomic desk or stuff that's making it more cohesive for you to show up and record content. That the reason I love talking about reducing friction is because I come from a user experience design background. I design mobile apps for a living, meaning I'm reducing friction so that you can get to your post as quickly as possible or create a new post as quickly as possible. Hopefully that's helpful.
That's really helpful because there's a bazillion questions that I could ask. And I'm going to ask one specific one, and let me explain the background. Recently, we spent 8 weeks in a place where I was still doing podcast interviews, but the sound bounced around like you wouldn't believe. This is a concrete building and walls are all concrete. And I'm just curious, I can't be the only person who's ever been in a situation like that. Hotel rooms, or maybe sometimes you have to climb into your closet to do your interviews because your kids are driving you nuts or whatever, making too much noise. How do you reduce echo in a space?
So the number one thing that's going to help you reduce echo is bringing the microphone as close as possible to the speaker. So they have lavalier mics that you can attach to your body, and they have a capture range of about 6 to 9 inches. So again, the closer you are to the microphone, the better. Now, I have a dedicated microphone in my space that I can move it away, when I'm not using it. But again, that microphone is about a fist from my face. And even if I were a little bit further away, it's going to be fine, because as I speak, my voice is going and falling. So it's like a waterfall animation, if you think about it. As the water spouts out, it's not going to keep going straight because of gravity. It's going to fall. So the same thing happens with that voice. As you speak, your voice is going to come out. The closer you are, the deeper you're going to get with the sound. But the farther you are, you're going to have a more rounded, well-rounded sound that people are used to listening to.
Interesting, because I have a dedicated microphone as well, but based on what you just said, mine's just a little bit further away. How do you set up your microphone so that it's close enough but not obtrusive in the video shot, if that makes sense?
That's an excellent question. And that's, again, the functionality of the lens on our cameras. Now, webcams have a really wide angle of view, which means that a lot of people using webcams are sitting much closer to the wall because they don't want to show everything, right? So it's really wide angle. So when you use a DSLR camera, or if you zoom in if I were to use my phone camera, let's see if I can demonstrate that, or maybe I can't. What that would do, you can crop into the shot based on where the camera is sitting, and then you can still have the microphone closer. Now, my microphone is close enough that it's not in the shot, and I don't like to be overly inserting the microphone in the shot. And that's because I'm using a 35 millimeter lens on my camera, which has a much narrower angle of view. So because of that reason, you don't see the rest of the room. You don't see, there's a limitation of what you'll see on the top and the bottom.
Interesting. No, that's really helpful, because I look at my setup and I often think, is it the best it could be? Could I do better? What kind of impact would a change make on the sound quality? Because for me, the sound quality is the most important thing. Because if you listen to what people are saying, they're not going to listen to your podcast or your video. Yeah, so that's pretty critical. So anyway, that's really helpful. So Junaid, just in terms of if people were interested in either reaching out to you for some help with their home studio setup, or if they're interested in your book, when is your book coming out, and how would people get a hold of you if they wanted your help?
Absolutely. So the book is coming out on July 26th. It's already in pre-launch mode. So if you wanted to go grab it on Amazon, you're welcome to, or you can go over to homestudiobook.com. That's going to take you directly to my site where I can sign the book and then mail it to you. And if people want to get in touch with me and learn about how they can improve their setup, they can head on over to homestudiomastery.com to learn more.
homestudiomastery.com. And I'll put that in the show notes, and I'll find the link to your book on Amazon as well, and also
Appreciate it.
Website. But Junaid, that's been really helpful. Thank you so much for saying you'd be on the podcast. And I wish you all the best with your book launch and with your business.
Thanks so much, Trudy. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you found the chat with Junaid Ahmed from Home Studio Mastery as insightful and inspiring as I did, and helpful. So if you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave an honest review and subscribe to the podcast, because your feedback helps others discover if this show is the right fit for them too. And remember to subscribe so that you never miss an episode filled with practical advice and actionable tips to help you grow your online business. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode.